welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real metaphysical and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, since Yule's coming up, we're going to be talking a little bit about the wild hunt, so stay tuned. Okay, with Yule on the way, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the wild hunt. During the live streams and in the Discord and in emails, I've gotten a lot of questions about the wild hunt and some of the lore on it. Now, honestly, over the years, I've heard so many conflicting stories on the wild hunt that I myself really wanted to look more into it and actually do this video as well. So we're learning together here because a lot of this lore, though I've heard it, I really didn't understand where its origins were coming from. And I'm not going to say I understand it fully yet. I still think there's a lot more digging and research to do. However, I would actually like to share with you some of what I've found in my research and also potentially talk about some of the gnosis that I've had that actually fits with what I found in my research as well. Because I have encountered entities that ride in the wild hunt, and I've heard about the wild hunt throughout my practice working in the different planes and with different groups of entities. So we'll see how long this video takes. Hopefully it won't take too long, but if it does, hopefully it's interesting all the same. Okay, so first off, for those who might not know, what is the wild hunt? The wild hunt is said to be a group of riders that ride across the night sky on turbulent or dark evenings. It's said to be ghostly or phantom in origin, and in some cases it's said to be led by a fae or a god or a goddess. But the commonality is a group of hunters or a huntsman riding through the night. Some of the other names for the wild hunt that I came across are the raging host or the wild host. So you are still seeing that whole wild hunt, raging phantom hunter aspects happening here. Now, one thing that I did find interesting is it does appear, as far as I can find, most of the myths that concern the wild hunt as we know it are actually Germanic in origin. In fact, most of these myths actually credit Odin himself as the leader of the wild hunt. And in many myths, sometimes the leader has a different name, but you still see them as a cloaked figure, a hooded figure, a figure wearing a hat, usually with one eye, carrying a spear of some kind. So most people actually believe these leaders of the hunt are, again, just Odin in one of his many, many disguises. Now, I find this particularly interesting because Odin was the first one I talked with about the wild hunt. I think the first time he mentioned it, I'd never even heard of it. It's been a while, but I don't think I had heard of it at that time in my practice. So for me, this actually does ring very, very true. He did tell me they often do have guest huntsmen, and that he himself doesn't always lead the wild hunt, and that there is actually more than one wild hunt. Now, one of the interesting things that I found in my research on the wild hunt is the fact that there is a lot of stories of the wild hunt stopping on its rides through the night by a mortal who was foolish enough not to get out of the way and slow them down in their hunting. And this would usually end up with the hunt master challenging the mortal to some kind of seemingly impossible contest. And the mortal, through some kind of intelligent shenanigans or trickery, manages to complete the contest. And usually this is like a tug-of-war style contest, is the one that I remember. And as the huntsman rode up, instead of pulling against the mortal tied it to a tree. And that, since the rope was tied off to the tree, it appeared as if the huntsman could not lift the mortal. Now, the huntsman did figure out what the mortal done, but for his cleverness, he was still rewarded. And in this particular myth, he's rewarded with a flank of meat. And with nothing else to carry it in, the mortal chooses to carry it in his boot. Which I found funny, because you hear a lot about boots with the Wild Hunt, and especially with Odin around Yule. So I found that particularly funny. But as the mortal journeyed home, the boot gets heavier and heavier and heavier, until once he's home, he looks down and he doesn't have a boot full of meat. He actually has a boot full of gold. And this, again, is a very common thing we see throughout the myths. The Wild Hunt tending to reward people, and most often with gold. Now, I really don't think, for me personally, that the gold is meant to be representative of a literal in these myths. Because if we are looking at Germanic origins, gold was very valuable. This is true. But it also represented prosperity. And given the time of the year that the Wild Hunt is most active, that being winter, I think the gift of prosperity in the upcoming year makes a lot of sense. And that really does tie into a lot of the Yule lore that we learned about Odin, where he does ride through the night rewarding people for their hard work and everything throughout the year, and often leaving gifts in their boots that they set out. So throughout many of the myths of the Wild Hunt, you will see where the hunt seems to be rewarding mortals or people with seemingly very mundane, even useless things, that when they get home or when they wake up in the morning turns into something very valuable to them. Again, usually it'll take the form of gold. Now, one thing that did continually pop up as I was doing my reading, constant warnings that should you hear the Wild Hunt riding through the night and hear their call, you should not mimic it. I've had a lot of people say, well, if I heard the Wild Hunt, I'd want to mimic it. I'd want to see them for myself, so I'd want to call them near, draw their attention. And honestly, there's a lot of warnings against this. Because it is true that the Wild Hunt could see your calls of as kind of a egging them on, a kind of you taking part in the hunt, the cheering them on, like you would cheer on a sporting event, and this could be a good thing. But it could draw their attention, in which case they could show up and they could reward you in some way for your fervor. However, there are stories where, yes, they were rewarded, so maybe they gave them a haunch of meat or something and it turned to gold, or they even just handed them gold. But in one story, they threw an entire freaking stag down the chimney that ultimately caused a backblast and killed the person. So this is one of those things where technically it was a reward, technically it was meant as a reward. But it was such a large reward and it caused an unexpected backblast that killed the mortal. Now, we did mention Odin is quite often seen as the hunt's leader. Now, there are several females that are also credited for leading the hunt. 3 of them are actually old goddesses of winter, each of them taking on their own form. And some people actually believe that these 3 goddesses are actually personas of Mother Frost, which is an ancient winter goddess. And I read a few accounts, I can't back this up in any way, but I did read a few accounts where Mother Frost was actually thought to be the queen of the Unseelie court, or Queen Mab, as many people would know her, the queen of the Dark Fae. And looking at the different legends around these goddesses, how they interact, especially the fact that they tie in with winter, I can see where they're getting that. But again, that's one of those things that's not really provable one way or the other, and that's why I do encourage people to do their own research on these things. But one of the goddesses that is credited with the Wild Hunt quite a bit, and that I did find really fascinating on a personal level, is Freya. She has actually been said to lead the Wild Hunt herself on many occasions. And as a goddess of love, beauty, war, and magic, it is Hunting was very important to the Viking Norse culture, so I can actually easily see why she would be one of the goddesses that would lead this hunt. Skadi is also another one that has been credited with leading this hunt, and that one makes a lot of sense because she actually is the goddess of the hunt in Norse mythology. Now, one of the things that I did find interesting is many of the goddesses are actually said to leave a phantom hound at the house of a person who does not lock up properly on a dark winter night. And these are not your favorite little, ooh, look, I have a new puppy for Christmas. No, these hounds are ill omens that will bring a form of bad luck to you for your stupidity and not locking up properly. And they will remain in your home for a full year until the following year when the goddess comes back to pick up the hound. And in many of the myths with the wild hunt, even when Odin leads it, phantom hounds riding along with the hunt is pretty common. So you'll see these hounds mentioned a lot within the wild hunt, but the only time I ever found a mention of them being left behind was if it was the goddess leading the hunt. So I don't know if this is something that could happen with any of the wild hunts or if it's just unique to that myth. But so far in my research, that seems to be the only place where it shows up. Now, that said, what is the wild hunt hunting? Well, in many cases, they're hunting stags and deer or anything that they can get their spears into. However, in a lot of the myths, they're actually hunting people and or wayward spirits to drag them back to the afterlife. Sometimes it's benevolent, sometimes it is not. It depends on how the myth is written. But they hunt all these things across the board throughout the myths. Now, one of the things that I have noticed is they have no problem hunting people, especially people who get in their way and challenge them, which, from what I can tell in the myths, generally ends badly. These people usually end up bound to the hunt in some way, riding with them forever. In fact, here in North America, we have a legend of the Riders in the Sky. I think Johnny Cash even did a song, Riders in the Sky, is actually based off the wild hunt. And at least here in North America, that particular legend is more linked with rolling thunder and how it sounds like cattle and riders thundering through. Now, the wild hunt in the Germanic myth actually is accompanied by a howling sound, which is generally really, really heavy winter winds. So on a dark, windy night is when the wild hunt is said to be nearby, and they are said to be the cause for this phenomenon. Now, we know many myths and legend does have a root of truth, but many of them are also ways to explain natural phenomena in nature. From what I'm gathering, all the wild hunts are just that. They got their start of the myth by trying to explain these phenomena. And since you do have those really high winds just shooting through the forest of winter, and that wind's going to move a lot faster because there's less leaves. It creates a beautiful howling sound, or at least I think it is. Some people find it creepy, and on those long, dark winter nights, I can see how it could get spooky. So a lot of people believe this is what gave rise to the legend and the myth of the wild hunt. However, again, I've worked with a few of the entities credited for it, and it does appear the wild hunt is a real thing. So yes, that probably gave rise to the wild hunts myth in some level, because we do know that people throughout the ages have used myths to explain natural phenomenon. Whether that inspired the entities to start actually hunting or not, that could go round and round forever. Who came first, the chicken or the egg factor? Now, one question I get a lot about the wild hunt is, when do they actually ride? When does the wild hunt take place? And honestly, the answer to this is all year long. Anytime it is dark and heavily windy or stormy, there's a fair chance the wild hunt will ride through that area very easily. They are more active in the winter time because this is prime hunting time. So they are very, very active in winter, and pretty much all through fall and winter season they are very active. Odin himself even says they ride every night during that time. However, they become more active 12 days leading into Yule, with Yule being the final night that they are truly heavily active. Now, I was trying to get some clarification on what Odin meant by we're more active during those days. He wasn't real clear on it. It sounds like they ride longer, they ride farther, and they have a lot more huntsmen with them. And at one point it even made it sound like there's more than one wild hunt active at those times. I think this might actually be where Odin and the others are leading their own hunts at the same time. I do still need to get more clarification on that, and I'm hoping to. It has been a drastically busy week, so I'm wanting to get this video up for you all before Yule. So I'm wanting to share what we already have on these, and perhaps I'll share more in the live streams that we do on Fridays and Sundays. But I did find it funny that the most active time was the 12 days leading into Yule, or the solstice, because that essentially means the wild hunt is most active the 12 days of Christmas. How is that not funny? That is just awesome to me, okay? I don't know. Maybe I have a dark sense of humor, but for me, I thought that was extremely awesome. Now, I've also been asked, has any mortal ever been asked to ride with them? Odin was not inclined to answer that question. And he said it would depend on how you view it, which sounded a little ominous to me. Because there are many huntsmen in the wild hunt that were once living mortals, but now are not living, that do hunt with them. Some of them as punishment even. Some of them doomed to ride and hunt forever. But some of these spirits actually view this punishment as a reward because they absolutely did love hunting. There was no greater thing than the hunt. And this is actually what they were rewarded with, was to ride forever with the wild hunt. And if you're a hunter and a sportsman, that's how you spend your time. I can see that. I know a lot of motorcyclists who the ideal of being able to ride their bike across the land for eternity, always riding free, sounds like a really great ideal to them and might be their own little slice of heaven. So punishment, reward, I guess that's debatable. Now, I know from a Christian viewpoint, being bound to the hunt is definitely viewed as a punishment because you chose these gods over the Christian gods. So, ooh, you're punished. You must ride with the huntsman now. But that would only be from a Christian viewpoint. So, honestly, from what I'm finding here, the wild hunt in and of itself doesn't really seem to be good or bad. They seem to be very neutral, more of a force of nature kind of concept. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me. And oh, Lord, we got jets. I hope that ain't coming through. I got a new mic, got a new dampener. Hopefully it cuts out some of this jet noise. But the wild hunt as a force of nature makes so much sense. Nature does not deal in the same realm that we do. It doesn't have our arbitrary views of right and wrong, good and evil. It is simply survival of the fittest and your ability to survive, your ability to hack it. So, yeah, the concept to kill or be killed is there. So the ideal of the wild hunt taking on this primal view of nature, survival of the fittest, really makes a lot of sense. And I think when we look at the wild hunt, we really should look at that survival of the fittest, the laws of nature, and set aside any of these idealistic, harmony, pacifist, world peace concepts that many people bring and try to impose on nature. We really need to look right at nature. And I really think way too many practitioners forget what nature really is. And they try to put those ideological views into it, and that really gets them in trouble. Far far few practitioners spend actual real time in nature connecting with it and understanding that survival of the fittest. Most of us have never actually seen hard times. What we would call hard times, most people would call abundance. I do a lot of bushcraft camping. I go out in the woods and I do try to live off the land and connect with nature as much as I can. And I would still yet say that I haven't been pushed. I have been thrown into survival situations once or twice in my life where those skills really had to come forward. And I can truly say that those situations and going out and doing a controlled camp out are drastically different. The controlled camp out allows you to connect with nature. It allows you to understand the skills. But being thrown in a survive or die situation, it changes the entire experience. There's just no way to duplicate it. But at the same time, I do think getting out there and practicing survival skills and really learning what you need, what is a necessity, what is needed, not what is just a luxury, really can help us reconnect to that primal nature, which is something far too many of us have become disconnected with. And I think perhaps studying the wild hunt and understanding them and their bloody, potentially violent antics is actually a good thing. A lot of people look down on hunters because, oh, you killed Bambi. Yeah, so what? I need food. That's that simple. And I think that, honestly, even hunting itself could be a way to reach out and connect with entities and these energies. And if you work with any of the entities that are associated with the wild hunt, Odin and Freya, Skadi, then these are activities you should do to try and work and connect with the entities. Now, I have only quickly touched on some of the lore and everything, but there was many tales of different haunted midnight procession type things. There was one in Hawaii where the phantoms would march across the land. I didn't really see anything particularly marked with hunting on it, but there was also one where in Japan spirits, gods, demons, everything would hoard and charge the sky. I wonder if jets count as wild hunt noise, because they must be circling my house right now. But again, I didn't, in at least the few passages I found on Japan's, I didn't see anything dealing with the hunting. But one thing that I did make note of, and why I'm bringing it up, is cultures from across the world all seem to have some myth or legend that based around these midnight hosts moving across the land in one way or the other. The wild hunt definitely seems to be the most popular. As I said, it's given rise to music and movies here in America. And honestly, I remember hearing the song by Johnny Cash when I was a little kid. My dad played it. I never would have thought I'd be here all these years later doing a YouTube video talking about the mythology of where it came from. So that was kind of cool. Anyways, this has just been a brief summary of the wild hunt and some of the myth and legends surrounding it. I would encourage you to definitely do some digging of your own and read, because I'll be honest, many of these myths and these legends are fascinating to read. Just for fun even. I'm actually considering trying to collect a bunch of these put together for my nieces and my nephews, so that they can read them. Hopefully spark their interest in mythology a bit. But if nothing else, just to be able to share, maybe even tell some of these tales around holiday times and whatnot. I really do find myths and legends like this fascinating. I've always enjoyed it. And it's even better when you can actually reach out to the entities involved and get their viewpoints and talk to them about it. which is something I would like to do perhaps in the future, do a part 2 on this video where I sit down and I ask Odin as many questions I can about the wild hunt. And of course, the video, I would just be going through the answers that he gave, not interviewing him there on camera. That'd be silly. But that is something I would like to consider doing, and I hope I have time to do. We'll see what happens. With the new year coming, we're going to be busy. We got a lot of things planned. We got classes to film. So we'll see what we can get done. Anyways, until next time, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I encourage you to do more research on the wild hunt. It's a fascinating topic. Join us Friday nights and Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our live streams. If you haven't already, subscribe. Click the bell icon so you're notified anytime we release a new video or we go live. And until next time, I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.